Welcome to the Crown Score Podcast. Kevin Stewart, Reggie Walker back again. A lot going on this week, Reggie, in Carolina sports. It's kind of a week that we've never seen before. I mean, Panthers training camp begins today. NHL free agency window opens tomorrow, and we have the NBA draft on Thursday night. And the Charlotte Hornets had the 11th overall pick in that draft. And here to provide a little bit of insight into what the Hornets may or may not do is Richie Randall. He's the co-host of the BuzzBeat podcast, talking all things Charlotte Hornets. Richie, thanks for coming on with us.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I'm always down to talk some Hornets.
Richie, you provide such a good analysis and deep analysis on Twitter. And the Hornets have really hit on some picks over the last few years with Miles Bridges, Devontae Graham, PJ Washington, of course, LaMelo Ball. The 11th pick, kind of a bit of a murky position to be in the NBA draft. Where do you think the Hornets might look when they're on the clock?
Yeah, after like pick 5 or 6, that's when things kind of go up in the air. Like there's not a clear cut, pick 7 through 14. And it's going to be a wait and see approach. I think Mitch Kupchak has always talked about acquiring talent. They're not at the stage yet where they can be selective over what position that they want to pick, because they're not at that point yet from top to bottom to where they're the deepest of rosters. So they're probably just going to go best player available, whoever they view that. Personally speaking, like my preference, if Moses Moody was there, I'm not sure if he'll fall to number 11. He's a guy that I think would work perfectly for this Hornets system. He's a 6'6" wing. He's 19 years old. He's got a long wingspan. I think he's a player that can be impactful on both ends of the court. He's a two-way player. He's an okay athlete, good, not great by any means. I think that's obviously going to hinder what he can do on the next level. But Hornets always need shooting. He's a good catch-and-shoot three-point shooter. His form is very smooth. He's not going to be a guy necessarily that you give the ball to and just allow him to work. And he's going to get buckets for himself. But he's going to be more of that low-usage type where he just plays off ball. And then on the other side of the court, he's a solid defender. Like I said, he's got a 7'1" wingspan, which is going to help with him contesting shots, with steals, with blocks. He rotates well off ball. He just competes on that end. I guess the biggest thing, like I said, like with the lack of athleticism there, does he have much upside, right? Like if he can only go so far with what he's been given to him athletically, and it's sometimes hard for him to kind of create shots for himself. He doesn't really have that explosiveness, and that can kind of limit how much he can grow as a player. The other player, and I don't know if you guys have any preferences at 11, but there's one player that I don't think would be a big, if he was drafted, I don't think many people would like him at number 11, but Corey Kispert out of Gonzaga. I know he's 22 years old, and it's funny, Mitch today in his pre-draft media availability, he talked about at number 11, it's probably going to be a younger guy, right? 19 years old, 20 years old or something like that. So Corey Kispert's 22 years old. So that kind of goes against what he was saying. But I think he's more than just a dead-eye shooter. I think the Hornets need someone that can shoot the ball. But I think he's a little bit better than that. He's underrated passing. He's a really good rim finisher as well.
That's so amazing to me that you think about the NBA draft and essentially a 22-year-old is old. And the rest of us on earth, right, are going, can I be 22 again? And when it comes to the NBA and the NBA draft, they're saying a 22-year-old is old. I'm particularly partial to quote unquote older players, guys that have been in college 2 or 3 years. I just think there's a better sense of what they are and a better sense of what they can become. I don't know about you, Richie, and Kevin, you've heard me say this for years, but I think if you're saying if about a guy more than 3 times, that's not a guy I necessarily want to draft, because as we both know, all 3 of us know, I should say, potential has gotten a lot of GMs fired. Now, it's made a lot of GMs look smart, some of which I think get too much credit for being smart. I mean, I don't, not with all due respect to Sam Presti, we need to stop only giving him flowers about the Kevin Durant pick, because that was a 2-player draft and he picked the second guy. So that was not, I'm going to be a genius here. But to your point, Richie, I thought, because I don't know that I love Corey Kispert at 11 either, but I am partial to him Davion from Baylor as well. Some of those guys that have been around college a little bit, because you kind of have a better sense of what they're going to bring to your basketball team. And I look at the Hornets right now as an organization that chasing the potential. I think they're too close to being a playoff team right now to have to lean on that. I think they need guys that can come in and fill roles, because I would argue, and I think many of us would argue, if some of those injuries didn't happen in certain spots down the stretch, and for all of y'all that are saying, I don't want to hear nothing about the Hornets, well, you're probably a Lakers fan, so don't give me the excuses about LeBron getting hurt either then. Yeah, I said it, so what? But the reality of the situation is, if there aren't certain injuries down the stretch, particularly Gordon Hayward, I remember LaMelo Ball had the hand injury as well. This is a team that probably at least fights deep in the first rounds, in a first round series. And then you're looking at this team completely differently.
I agree. I think I mentioned this at the top, like, they still need to acquire talent, because with those injuries, we saw the bottom just completely fall out. But to your point, they were a top 4 team in the East when everyone was healthy. And once when those injuries started to pile up, we saw, the lack of depth there. So I think I'm more willing to, I guess, take a chance on an if or a potential if it's a position where we already have strength.
Yes.
For example, like the center position, that is a position of need. And there's a lot of people that are wanting to draft Şengün out of Turkey. To me, there's a lot of ifs with him. And that's where I get a little bit weary about drafting that type of guy. Not because I don't think he can't turn into something 2-3 years down the road, but if this is an organization that feels that pressure to make the playoffs, like you're mentioning, because I think they do feel that pressure, especially after they overperformed last season, I think you got to take more of a sure thing. And obviously, you got free agency as well.
And I think that goes to what Mitch Kupchak said on Monday. Didn't he say something to the effect of, we're in year 2 of a rebuild, but it's been accelerated? I don't know if that's the exact word, but he basically said the rebuild is happening faster because of what LaMelo and Miles and obviously Gordon Hayward and those guys were able to do last year. It sped up the process. So I think that fits right into what you were just saying there, Richie.
Yeah, the internal growth of all these players is definitely jumping at a higher rate than many people thought.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the work ethic or the desire to play for a coach like James Borrego too. There's no doubt they need to add some size. And during the finals, I'm watching DeAndre Ayton throughout the whole playoffs, and I'm like thinking, man, if they had a guy just that big, not DeAndre Ayton, it's talent, but if they had someone that big that LaMelo could just throw a ball up to and just not be bullied by Robin Lopez down the stretch. I mean, that's a kind of position that they really need.
Well, and I'm going to jump in here because I think that's a great point, because when I was watching the playoffs, and I think I even tweeted this, I know I texted a couple of people, and I said between DeAndre Ayton and Joel Embiid and, some of the other big guys that played well in the playoffs, I think they may have saved the true center in basketball these playoffs. 2 things that I felt like came back this year in the playoffs were the fact that big men can help you, and mid-range shooting is a part of basketball still. And it's not just threes and layups.
Yeah, I saw that.
You can do some mid-range, yeah.
Ayton and Book.
Yeah, Ayton, Booker's hitting mid-range. You've got Giannis knocking down mid-range shots. Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton. You saw so many guys, I thought, in the playoffs just playing that mid-range game. Kevin Durant's been great at it, obviously, for years. But there were so many guys that I thought really played in that mid-range in the playoffs. And I think that is going to be, right, because we always talk about copycats. I think that's going to be something that we see going forward. So getting back to the draft and the Hornets, they're definitely going to be looking for somebody that can make shots. Threes obviously are important, but if they can just knock down shots, even in 2-point range, 16, 17 feet as wing players, I think that's valuable.
Yeah, I also think there's a lot of players in this draft where shooting is a swing skill. If you just go up and down the list around the range of 11, and you're just like, if this guy had a shot, he would be like a top 5 pick. And that's what I kind of worry about with the Hornets at number 11. Clearly, in any draft, when you're drafting, late lottery, there's going to be a lot of question marks with these players. But yeah, that to your point with the playoffs and everything, it kind of changed your mindset with how you can win. There's not one specific way. It doesn't have to be like pressure the rim, shoot threes. You need some guys that can go out there and hunt some shots in the mid range. I'm not sure if the Hornets technically have a guy like that on the roster right now, but James Borrego does preach getting to the rim and shooting threes as well.
Here's Richie Randall. He's a co-host of the Buzzbeat podcast. Richie, thanks so much for coming on with us, and good to connect.
All right, thank you guys. Have a good one.
You too.
Appreciate it, Richie.
So as we mentioned earlier in the podcast, the Panthers training camp begins today. A lot of storylines going into this year's training camp, the year two of Matt Rule. Reg, what's your biggest storyline as you see it as training camp gets underway?
I think one storyline. I'm not going to use the obvious one, which is Sam Darnold. Okay, so I'm going to skip that. I think it's the defensive line and where Brian Burns and Reddick and that group. How do they settle on a rotation up there? And what that rotation looks like in terms of productivity, particularly against the run. I'm not worried about this group against the pass with guys like Reddick and Gross Matos and Brian Burns. I'm concerned if Derek Brown and some of those other guys inside can shut down other teams' running games. I think that is a major storyline for this team because that forces teams, if they can't run the football, now you've got to throw into a secondary that will eventually, obviously because he's got part of the suspension left, will include A.J. Boye, Dante Jackson. Why am I drawing a blank on last year's Rookie of the Year? Jeremy Chin, thank you. All of those guys back there roaming that secondary are going to create problems, especially if they don't have to be concerned about stopping the run.
That's a damn good secondary too. My storyline is also on the defensive side of the ball. I didn't want to go the Darnold route. I didn't want to go the offensive line route because that's clearly everybody talking about. But my storyline is, can J.C. Horn lock down that number one corner spot? I mean, we've had a lot of guys. I mean, he's the first defensive player taken in the draft. He's got some competition with A.J. Boye, Dante Jackson, although I don't think Dante's a one. And I don't think he has played like a one in his time here. But, you've seen some guys come into the NFL as rookies and flop, and not live up to the position where they were taken. So I think he's going to win this no matter what, because of the way people talk about him. But if J.C. Horn can't lock down that number one position and you have to leave it up to A.J. Boye and at the number one, I think he's okay for now. But, it's going to come down to, here's what I'm getting lost here. Because last year, Derek Brown, he kind of emerged a little late. Yep. Right. So, and he didn't have the rookie OTAs. You didn't have the mini camp. You didn't have the same training camp. But now, you're putting the pads on, you're hitting each other and you're playing preseason games. And I think this is where J.C. Horn can really make his impact on this defensive roster for 2021. Reggie, if you had to pick a breakthrough athlete, someone on this Panthers team that you're looking to watch that could really wow some people and open some eyes this year, if you got somebody, who would it be?
I think it's Chuba Hubbard. And the main reason why is that will tell us if Christian McCaffrey is healthy down the stretch. If Chuba Hubbard is playing well early in the year and able to give McCaffrey some downs to where he's not taking shots, not taking hits, and he's more fresh in fourth quarters, I think you're going to have a team that's winning more games. I think you're going to have a team that's more dynamic offensively because McCaffrey is healthy. And I think that also will mean that they have an additional weapon in Chuba Hubbard that they trust in big spots. I think that's a huge one.
And if he can come on and emerge as a weapon, I mean, they really have an endless amount of weapons. And people forget that they signed David Moore, who's a pretty good receiver for Seattle.
Yes.
My guy to watch, who I think is going to have a big impact on the team, is the guy you just mentioned. I think it's going to be Derek Brown, because you have Hassan Reddick now bookending Brian Burns in that defensive line, as we've mentioned on this podcast many times. He's got the time now to develop and to learn with Phil Snow and learn technique. And we saw it with the Bucs last year as they went deeper into the playoffs. Their defense continued to improve. So I think when you have the offensive line paying attention to the pass rushers, and you're going to have YGM coming in on a rotation, as you said, it's going to free up some space for Derek Brown to really eat and disrupt that passing game and stop the run at the line of scrimmage.
I agree. I think that's a great call, Kev. And look, at the end of the day, what's been the calling card of the Carolina Panthers when they've had success as an organization? That defensive front has always been good when they've made deep playoff runs in this organization.
You're right. There's no doubt about it. And I think Derek Brown can really add to that this year. One thing, did you see the Hurricanes news this week? They traded Alex Nedeljkovic to the Detroit Red Wings for a third-round pick and the right to Jonathan Bernier. What did you make of that?
I was surprised, but at the same time, I'm no longer surprised in sports anymore. So I just said something that was very contradictory. Nothing surprises me, but I can be caught off guard is the best way I can phrase that. And look, I thought Nedeljkovic obviously it played well, but it's always about, can I get younger and cheaper in sports? And if I can play with the salary cap a little bit more and a little bit better. That's always everybody's idea. But
I'm building up here, Rich.
I don't love it. And I know you're fired up about it, Kev. Tell them why you're mad, son.
Listen, I'm not even a Hurricanes fan. And I saw this news cross my Twitter and I was very angry because you said younger and cap space, right? Bernier's older.
Right.
And he's been in this league a long time. He's okay. They don't have any goalies signed to their roster right now. Mrazek's a free agent. Reimer's a free agent. They have the rights to Bernier. But here's a kid, okay, who won you that first round series against Nashville. They don't get out of that series if it's not for him. He's a Calder Cup.
I know.
He's a Calder Cup finalist this year at the age of 25. He won your AHL team a Calder Cup 2 years ago. They're still the champs, by the way. And then Detroit signs him to 2 years, $6 million, which is very affordable for a starting goalie in the NHL. And now you also you're going to let Dougie Hamilton walk. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what Don Waddell's plan is at goalie. I know I've seen some rumors that they could be in on some free agents that are going to cost them more money than Nedeljkovic would. But here's a kid who grew up in your organization, was a Rookie of the Year finalist, 25 years old, very cheap, very, very good, and you just dumped him off for nothing. You could have got so much. Even if you wanted to move him, you could have got so much more for him.
I agree. I can't argue with you, Kev.
I'm not even a Hurricanes fan, and I'm mad.
Or are you more mad that he didn't end up being a Ranger?
No, we got Shesterkin.
Okay, just making sure. So I know you're greedy about your Rangers.
I am. It's been, one cup in 80 years, damn it. I want something. All right.
Not like me being a Titans fan.
Hey, you guys are on the up and up, though.
We're coming. We're coming. Speaking of on the up and up, I got to give a shout out to many of the linemen that were at ACC Media Days last week. I was there, and the big man drip, as you say, was serious. Big fellas, I don't know if it's because of NIL money or what, but the big fellas were dressed. They were clean. I'm just got to say, got to give credit to the big guys when they get their fashion right.
Speaking of NIL, Sam Howell getting that deal with Bojangles. Good for him. Good for him. Carolina kid through and through.
All day long and every day long. All
right, Reg, where can we hear you this week? Because I know you're always on radio and broadcast. Where can we hear you this week?
Yeah, Wednesday I'll be on ESPN 7:30 at 4:45. That's my normal Wednesday time slot there. Obviously here on Crown Score, you can always catch me. And then as football season rolls around, there will be a lot more of locations where you can catch me and find me. And then later today, I'm going to be at Big South Media Day. So a busy week for me this week and obviously last week being a part of ACC Media Days as well.
Man, you're a busy man, Reg. All right, that's going to do it for this week. This week's Crown Score podcast. We'll see you next week.
Later, Kev.